Greetings, spirit beings, greetings, supreme being. Welcome to Universal Peace Television, the channel or BC Hoffman on YouTube. So this is the broadcast. Switch to basic. World War III. Who is who in the zoo? Veterans Today article. Trump might not certify Iran. Prepare. So that's the 15th, coming up the 15th. And today is the 13th. Whether he will certify Iran or not. So this is a July 5th, 2016 article, but I've wanted to study the veterans today, or read some articles basically, if you want to call it study, I don't know. But, well, I've heard that it's mainly the Jesuits and Masons that want this global government, Luciferian global government, also known as New World Order, which had too many negative connotations. Basically, it's this man, Adolfo Nicholas, is their leader. And basically, the pedo elite are using the military. They're abusing people and depopulating Earth, etc. And they control these directed energy torture weapons, which I often cover in my broadcasts. The Gulf War syndrome veterans, the squalene that was used, etc. Also stuff in their food to sterilize them. Religion, etc. to enslave them. And to make them fight their fellow humans and think that that's an honorable thing to do. The tactical nukes in Syria and the depleted uranium war crime. What have we learned from the past? And then there's that risk of these nuclear weapons, which would cause a 7-year nuclear winter if they're even real. Some people think there's a nuclear weapons hoax. And perhaps everything we read online is some kind of psyop or part of a psyop if everybody's brain controlled with synthetic telepathy. If you can give me one good reason why everybody cannot be brain controlled with synthetic telepathy, that would be awesome. In the comments or Skype me, ProLogic999 on Skype. So they basically may have these world war plans, the third Jesuit world war. They've tortured 50 million innocent people to death in the Inquisition, the Jesuit Holocaust, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, etc. Famous for their pedophilia because they've paid more in these pedo cases than anybody else. Satanists posing as Christians, etc. It's all covered more in depth in my previous broadcasts. So let's start reading the article. One tip was basically for preventing world war over Iran, 7-year nuclear winter, and scalar world war, etc. To prevent that, to give a list to the IAEA of the suspect sites, basically, and then they will do the inspections, etc., and then there's no problem. So that may still be a possibility. Perhaps it's just a misunderstanding. That's the normal procedure they use, and now you have a new group of people under President Trump. So It's unlikely, but perhaps they don't know. They have to give that list of suspect sites before they can do the inspections, basically. So that's one idea, and the other is to have an agreement with the Russian president, and Iran could still allow the inspections. Anything to prevent World War III, because the EMP would destroy all of our equipment and electronic watches and cars, etc. So that would suck tremendously. Especially a 7-year nuclear winter, and even if there would be a nuclear weapons hoax, then if they have these ground detonator devices, then the effect would still be the same. Then everybody would be contaminated, and you need a radiological water filter and storable food. So that's good to have in any case, to be prepared for emergencies. The government is, why shouldn't the people be? They have continuity of government, why not continuity of society? So let's start reading this article on veteranstoday.com.
World War III, Who is Who in the Zoo? By Catherine Frisk. Many years ago, when Obama first became president, he was sold to the world as the Mandela of the Northern Hemisphere, said Obama. Soon after he was elected, a representative from the American Embassy in Pretoria, South Africa, came on a local news station and proudly declared that Obama was the ruler of the world. I stumbled on a man called Brzezinski, who was largely responsible for making Obama president the first time around and again in 2012. I knew very little about him. South Africa had their own problems from 1960–2008, and very little outside our sphere of influence was relevant to me at the time. For a breakdown on that story, see, There is only one game and you do not know how to play it. Brzezinski, so I learned, is Polish and comes from a small town in what was Poland, but is now Ukraine. He comes from what they call the black nobility of Europe. These royal families were the backbone of the Holy Roman Empire, and they are joined by the hip to the Vatican. Many of them have become popes and cardinals. For over 1,000 years they have used the Vatican as a front to own property and have written papal bulls that state that the Pope owns the planet, all bodies on the planet and all souls. 1,000 years after he died, Jesus was not around to put them straight on this issue, or that the Pope does not represent him. When they dedicate any country to the Virgin Mary, what they are really doing is using a papal bull or trust that entitles the Vatican to own all the land of that country. They have also used the Vatican Bank for money laundering. Think mafia here. Many of them belong to what is called the Illuminati P2 Lodge. That is the background of Brzezinski. Keeping Mr. Busy in mind, here are the main players.
One thing I was thinking about is how they are using religion to get off the hook, basically. They form controlled opposition to themselves and call themselves the Antichrist to prevent any real opposition to their depopulation, murder and torture, basically. And they have these directed energy weapons, and they control the judges with them, with these directed energy weapons. So people cannot use the legal system to do anything about the really bad guys. That's the idea. What do you all think? Let me know in the comments, or Skype me live in this broadcast. If you like. Skype ProLogic999. Right top corner, you can see my name. So, keeping Mr. Brzezinski in mind, here are the main players. Then, when I look at the article, I switch back. It's ProLogic999, people on Skype. That's clear. So I thought first read only what is written in bold letters. The main players. So the article is who in the zoo, World War III. In the theater, basically, they call it a theater. 1. Napoleon, World War I, World War II. World War III is all about the subjugation of Russia. Well, I'm thinking the Jesuits, First and Second World War, etc. 2. This is the tripartite alliance. A. Zionists, these are not real Torah Jews. Torah Jews do not read the Babylonian Talmud like the Zionist Jews do. There are 6 Jewish people that want to depopulate the earth, also listed by me, but there are also many non-Jews that are involved. You have Muslim Luciferians, Muslim Freemasons. It's the same thing, Freemason equals Luciferian. And, well, I wouldn't put them in first place, but perhaps he's right to do that, because of the funding of the war, etc. We get into that later. B. The Vatican hierarchy, a pyramid structure with the Pope on top, is an Illuminati corporate fascist structure supported by the black nobility of Europe and the cabal families in the Americas, like Rockefeller, Bush, Clinton, Buffet, etc., controlled by the Council on Foreign Relations. Well, they should arrest all Freemasons and all other members of secret societies, including the Committee of 300 members, George Soros and Margaret Chan, all secret society members, especially the ones that advocate depopulating the earth, that have advocated it, and that's also clear from their book quotes and illegal Georgia Guidestones, you could argue. But apparently they have good ties with the people with the directed energy torture weapons and a synthetic telepathy machine. So that's why we cannot trust anyone, trust no one, nothing is what it seems. The Wahhabi Sunni Muslim Brotherhood, see, is in bed with the Zionists and the Vatican CIA Nazis. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Israel and Turkey. So that was the tripartite alliance. So let's just read it from here.
Keeping Mr. Easy in mind, here are the main players. Zbigniew Brzezinski. Zbigniew Brzezinski. 1. Napoleon. WW1. WW2. WW3 is all about the subjugation of Russia. Why? In order to dedicate Russia to the Virgin Mary so that the black nobility and the Vatican can put all the land into the trust of the papal bulls, giving them ownership and control over Russia's massive landmass and abundant resources. For 1,000 years, Russia has refused to join the Roman Catholic Church. They are Orthodox Christians and protectors of the original Apostolic Christian Church in Constantinople, now Istanbul, controlled by the Turks. Since Putin took over in 1999 and threw out the Rothschild and Rockefeller bankers, as well as putting out an arrest warrant for George Soros, he has restored and rebuilt many of the churches and has brought back religious education in all the schools. What he is doing, as this story unravels and as will become clear, is setting in motion the Third Way plan, that the Tsar of Russia intended to implement exactly 100 years ago, before the Communist Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. This plan would have boosted their economy with industrialization, turning it into a major global competitor. Instead, the Bolsheviks decimated the middle class, abolished private property ownership and private business enterprise, put all the top intellectuals and leaders of their time into gulags, and got rid of the best generals in the military. When Hitler finally invaded, Stalin had already prepared the ground for a broken, demoralized Russian citizenry. But as history turned out, not quite as broken as the funders of WW2 expected. From the Battle of Stalingrad onwards, the Russians turned the whole situation around and did their own blitzkrieg from Moscow to Berlin. For an insight into the over 30 million Russians who died and the Holocaust as seen from a Russian perspective, see Alla Pierce, Rewriting History about WI_. CI_Mossad_ISIS_35_ISIS 300/2312. This is the Tripartite Alliance. A. Zionists. These are not real Torah Jews. Torah Jews do not read the Babylonian Talmud like the Zionist Jews do. The Talmud is a biblical commentary written by Jews who lived in Babylon from approx 300 AD, 700 AD. In many instances it contradicts the Old Testament and the Palestinian Talmud, which predates it from as early Christian times. I read somewhere recently, cannot find the link now, Roald Dahl, author of The Big Friendly Giant BFG, a fighter pilot in the RAF in WW2 after the war, as speaking to a Jewish Holocaust survivor who tried to explain to him that the enemy of a Jew is a Jew. The large majority of Zionists living in Palestine today come from Eastern Europe, Ukraine and Georgia, and intermarried with the Khazars who converted to Babylonian Talmudic Judaism, as opposed to obeying the Covenant and the Torah. Their objective is to create a Rothschild-funded Greater Zionist state, extending from the Nile River as far down as Luxor, to control the Suez Canal, to take over Lebanon and then annex Syria and northern Iraq up to the Euphrates River. In my religious prototype, they fall into the category of Caiaphas, the high priest of the temple in the time of Jesus, and the Levite Sadducee priesthood. The persecution of the Hebrews and the Samaritans in the 1st century AD is seen today in the persecution and what amounts to the genocide of the Palestinians, who are the descendants of the northern tribes of Israel, the Christian converts and the later Muslim converts. The moneylenders who broke the covenant and installed a monarchy, practiced usury and a debt-based monetary system is the equivalent today of Goldman Sachs, who rules the world and is a financial advisor to the Pope, the central bankers and the Orthodox Zionists who want to rebuild the Babylonian prototype temple in Jerusalem that was destroyed in 70 AD. This is not what we believe to be Solomon's temple. There is, to date, no evidence of the so-called First Temple having been built in Jerusalem, and it appears that these stories found in the Bible, along with many others, have been plagiarized from Egyptian, Mitanni or possibly even Lebanese texts and history from as early as 500 to 600 years before the minor chieftain David ruled Judea. The Amarna letters between Akhenaten and the Mitanni kings have shed more light on this period in time, and hopefully in the near future the true location of this temple and the real identity of Solomon can be established. Amenhotep III is a very possible contender. Vatican City. The Vatican hierarchy, a pyramid structure with the Pope on top, is an Illuminati corporate fascist structure supported by the black nobility of Europe and the cabal families in the Americas like Rockefeller, Bush, Clinton, Buffett etc., controlled by the Council on Foreign Relations. The Zionist Khazar Jewish bankers have always supported them. The Del Banco family of Venice funded the Vatican mercenaries to sack the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople in the 13th century AD and have been funding their religious wars ever since. Going right back to the 1st century AD, they were aligned with the Roman tax collectors and the money lenders of the temple. They have a long history together. It is no coincidence that the protocols of Zion have been plagiarized from the Jesuit oath and are a similar prototype. Their objective is to restore the Holy Roman Empire, which will incorporate North and South America, the whole of Europe and Russia. In my religious prototype, they fall into the category of Pontius Pilate, the Roman procurator during the time of Jesus. Today represented by the Caesar Pope and his Blackwater private mercenary CIA armies. In the last 1,000 years, the Roman Catholic Inquisition, which has still not been disbanded, has terrorized people across Europe and has extended its reach into the Americas through Georgetown University, the Jesuits and Opus Dei. They are opposed to the Orthodox Russian, Greek, Slavs of the Balkans, Armenian, Syrian, Palestinian, Egyptian and Ethiopian Christians who are apostolic with a structure based on the disciples and do not believe the Pope is Christ's representative on earth. Neither do the British. As Elizabeth I once told the Pope, the British Isles, including Ireland, Wales and Scotland, were Christian long before Rome, and they are not subject to the Pope's authority, as were all the early Christians of the 1st and 2nd century in Armenia, Galatia, the Rhineland, Aquitaine and Gaul. All were apostolic-based and saw James the Righteous as the first bishop of the early church. The Cathars, the Huguenots and the Protestant Reformation was a resurgence of these groups. Saudi Prince Bandar bin Sultan, Bandar Bush, meeting with former U.S. President George Bush. Saudi Prince Bandar bin Sultan, Bandar Bush, meeting with former U.S. President George Bush. C. The Wahhabi Sunni Muslim Brotherhood is in bed with the Zionists and the Vatican CIA Nazis. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Israel and Turkey, known under their various prolific names, Daesh, Al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, ISIS etc. All of them have a vested interest in ISIS. Their objective is to create a Sunni caliphate under Sharia law that incorporates the Balkans, Greece, Turkey, Armenia, all the stands, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, those areas not under control of the Zionists, and Africa reaching as far down south as the Congo. In my religious prototype, they fall into the category of the Edomite Arab Herodian kings who married into the Levite Sadducee priesthood and today are represented by the Saudi royals, who were incidentally founded by a Khazar or Jew from Turkey. They are opposed to the Shiite Iranian, Lebanese, Syrian and Iraq Muslims who believe in the direct descendant of Muhammad called the Mahdi, who will join with Jesus in the last days and fight the Antichrist. The Shiite are proponents of Surah 2:140 and 113. Do ye know best, or doth Allah? Allah will judge between them on the day of resurrection concerning that wherein they differ. In predominantly Shiite Islamic countries there is far more tolerance for Jews, Christians, Muslims be they Sunni, Shiite or Druze and Yazidis amongst others. This is very different to a country like Saudi Arabia that has a proclivity for chopping of the heads of those who do not have a Wahhabi mindset or even crucifying them. In all three of these models we have the opposing forces of good and evil. Religion and politics are more intricately interwoven than we would like to admit. On the one hand, self-empowerment, self-governance, freedom, nation-state sovereignty, social, religious and racial equality and tolerance in alignment with Genesis 1. On the other we have an autocratic dictatorship, slavery, intolerance, social inequality and religious and racial hatred. The Orthodox Zionists, the Roman Catholics and the Wahhabi are all misogynists and share a hatred of women. All three impose strict dress codes and social rules of separation. This in alignment with Genesis 2. You have a choice. The decision is up to you. However, when reading the end of Revelation, the Omega to the Alpha, keep in mind that as it was in the beginning, so it will be in the end. And the beginning is Genesis 1, not Genesis 2. The great judge will judge the nations, not the autonomous regions of a Zionist state, a Roman Empire or a Sunni caliphate, or how well the TPP and the TIP human enslavement agreements worked out, a corporate fascist system that deprives people of nation-state sovereignty, enfranchisement and due process under the law, as Martin Schulz of the EU recently proclaimed following the Brexit referendum. It is not the EU philosophy that the crowd can decide its fate. In Revelation you are invited to a wedding between the bridegroom and the bride. I doubt very much if the bride or the women attending will be dressed up in tents and will only be allowed to eat the leftovers in a kitchen in a back room somewhere separated from their families. The L and the OM will stand united as they always have been, and we are made in their image. If you have any more doubts about that, read Proverbs 8. Stalingrad dead Germans WW2 second world war amazing pictures images photos soldiers 0013 WW2. The Nazis in Germany were funded by the Americans, Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, Ford, Bush, Allen Dulles, AIG, General Electric and a number of others. Jacob Schiff at the Federal Reserve also funded the Japanese to go to war with Russia and China and steal all their gold, which they did. The U.S. only joined the war for two reasons: to get the gold away from the Japanese before they lost the war to Russia and China, and to reach Berlin before the Russians did. Rockefeller and J.P. Morgan and the Federal Reserve Bank also funded Lenin and Trotsky and the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, for three reasons. 1. Russia has more oil than God and they wanted to stop the Tsar from developing their oil fields and being in competition with the Americans. 2. To steal all the Tsar's gold. 3. To kill off the whole royal family. 2017 is the 100th anniversary of the Bolshevik Revolution. The Muslim Brotherhood in the Middle East fought on the side of the Nazis. The Zionists not only helped run the death camps, but also fought on the side of the Nazis in the Middle East to get rid of the British. The Jews they killed in the camps were Torah Jews who did not believe in Zionism or a Zionist state. They believe they will only get their own country when their Messiah returns. Creating a Zionist state is breaking the covenant, as they did long ago when they demanded a king. 1 Samuel 8. George Soros is a Zionist, a Jew, and during WW2 rounded up Jews for the camps in Hungary. The Vatican supported the Nazis. The last Pope Benedict is a Nazi. Francis is not much better. He is a Jesuit and supported the fascist Nazi junta in Argentina during the Videla period in the 1970s, and there are ongoing investigations into his involvement in missing persons who were arrested without a warrant, detained without trial, tortured and in many instances disappeared. There are lots of Nazis in Argentina, especially Patagonia, while the Dutch royal family has extensive investments and property ownership in that country. After WW2, both the Vatican and the US took all the top SS Nazis to the US. And to South America in Project Paperclip. Not 100 of them, but thousands. The Nazis and the CIA have not been dormant since 1945, if anything they have been frighteningly active in many parts of the world. Here is a timeline of CIA atrocities from 1929 to 1993. On Syria. Mr. President, your strategy is a Bush 43, Dick Cheney 1. On Syria, Mr. President, your strategy is a Bush 43, Dick Cheney 1. 4. Fast forward to 2012 to 2016. Obama is Muslim Brotherhood. He was put into power as president by Brzezinski. BZ comes from a small town in Ukraine. where the Ukrainian Nazis supported Hitler and massacred not only Jews but thousands of Polish Protestants, a fact often ignored in history books. Bzy is a Jesuit. His father was the Polish ambassador in Canada during WW2. He grew up in Canada and went to a Jesuit school, then went to the USA. Since Kennedy was assassinated, he has always had a major role to play along with Kissinger, Zionist, Bush, Nazi Vatican, CIA. They are all part of the Bilderberg group started by the Dutch royal family, who are all Nazis. It is no coincidence that the USA and the Saudis held the world to ransom with the petrodollar that forced whole countries around the world to trade oil in dollars. The Nazi-Muslim Brotherhood connection runs deep and long and transferred itself to the USA, which in turn sheds a lot of light on September 11, the Nazi Bush crime family syndicate, the dancing Israelis and the Saudi involvement. It is now common knowledge that Osama bin Laden was a CIA asset and died from kidney failure in a CIA hospital facility before the Twin Towers came down. After George Bush Jr., it is also no surprise that the next U.S. president was from the Muslim Brotherhood funded by the Wahhabis and the Saudi royal family. From 2012 we have seen the Arab Spring and the rise of Al-Qaeda/Daesh in all its many varieties. Daesh is funded by the Muslim Brotherhood, Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Turkey. They are also funded and supported by the Zionists in Israel and the CIA in the U.S. Saudi Arabia has funded not only Obama's presidency but 20% so far of Hillary Clinton's campaign in 2016. They will expect to get what they paid for: support for Daesh, known as ISIS, and its many other acronyms and offshoots, Al-Nusra, Al-Qaeda, etc. etc. Brzezinski.
Universal peace. Now, you're going to have a deportation force, and you're going to do it humanely, and you're going to have a deportation force.
We got to go, and we got to knock the shit out of these people. I'm Donald Trump. I own the Miss Universe pageant, and I'm here to answer your questions.
You can take the greatest Jewish minds ever. Marx, Freud, Einstein. What have they given us? Communism, infantile sexuality, and the atom bomb.
Started Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan to get the Russians out. The Taliban, who wanted to eradicate opium production in Afghanistan, has instead been terrorized and demonized by the U.S. military as the enemy. The CIA and the Pentagon now protect the poppy fields for $1 billion a year drug industry, shipped out through NATO bases, muled through the Balkans, and that poisons and kills the youth across the globe. There was a reason they broke up Yugoslavia, balkanized it, and broke the country to pieces. These are the people behind the destruction in Libya and Syria, and they also want to bring down Lebanon and Iran. They are the same people behind the coup in Ukraine and the civil war there. Victoria Nuland, American Zionist, Joe Biden, American Nazi Vatican, and the Kiev Nazis, Banderites. The maiden coup was funded by Rockefeller, Chevron, and by the Soros Foundation. The Nazis of Ukraine were also supported by the CIA in WW2. Same story, different century. WW3 objective, WW3 and bring down Russia, the Orthodox Church, Shiite Muslims and Torah Jews. There are more Jews living in Iran than in any other country outside of Israel, and they have protection and representation in the Iranian parliament. They are not Zionists. The other objective is in line with Brzezinski's grand chessboard: get control of Eurasia and the Silk Road. Now it gets very disturbing. The CIA has taken over the control of the German intelligence service. This happened in June 2016. The U.S. military bases in Germany are the largest outside of the USA. Obama said last week that the U.S. military will be there until 2099. Germany is still an occupied country. Does it want to be occupied? Since the end of WW2, U.S. policy has been to keep the Russians out, the Germans down and the Americans in. When does Germany get to govern itself as Switzerland has for almost 1,000 years? When do they get to stop paying the Vatican reparation for taking control of their own land which they have paid back in taxes for over 100 years? Surely this debt has been paid off by now. Or are they forever indentured peasants of Vatican feudal lands? NATO is doing major military exercises on Russia's borders, the most recent in June 2016 on the anniversary of Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union. During WW1 and WW2, Britain, Greece and Russia were on the same side and in an alliance known as the Allies, which included the French government in exile, the Norwegian government in exile, Canada, Australia, New Zealand and South Africa amongst many others. They won the battle but lost the war, which has continued until the present day. I am sure that there are many who would be shocked, my grandfather included, who fought in North Africa and as part of the South African contingent that freed Florence from the Nazis, to discover that their so-called American allies were in fact the enemy. I doubt if he and many others would be able to come to terms with that mind-FCK. I consider it a blessing that he is no longer here now to see what is going on in the world. WW2 almost destroyed him. It certainly destroyed millions more, physically, emotionally and spiritually on all sides. They are about to do it again. Recently Greece, an Orthodox Christian country who has undergone repeated Operation Gladio, CIA-funded fascist juntas since WW2, tried to leave the EU with Grexit. They won their referendum, but democracy was set aside and instead the EU bankers ignored them, threatened them and imposed yet more austerity measures on the country, which has literally been brought it to its knees with a little help from Goldman Sachs. Greece as we knew it is no more. Britain has voted to leave the EU with Brexit. This involves more than the EU union and will be a deciding factor as to whether Britain joins the Nazis, the USA Fourth Reich, this time under NATO and in plain sight openly entrenched in Germany, as opposed to their covert support just over 70 years ago, which has only come to light in recent years and often only published in independent media sources. Will Britain again align with Russia? Do Wallis Simpson's followers still have any influence in the UK today as she did when she took control and mind-manipulated the future King of England with a US-funded fascist mentality? And is there another Wallis Simpson waiting to get her claws into Prince Harry? Or is that no longer necessary now that there is a Goldman Sachs stooge running the Bank of England? Russia and China are in an alliance. Britain has joined the AI Bank, whilst the US has not. The Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, which will fund the building of the Silk Road project, where they plan to fully develop Eurasia and have fast rail from Beijing to Moscow, Vladivostok to Moscow and across the Middle East into Europe, as far west as Lisbon. It is a massive project and will boost the 21st century global economy to levels we have never seen before, along with providing close cooperation between Russia and China for space exploration. As things stand at the moment with the new Cold War that people like Breedlove threaten to turn into a new hot war WW3 scenario, the U.S.
So one thing I disagree on with President Trump is about nuclear weapons. Of course, I'm for less nuclear weapons, for dismantling all nuclear weapons. We don't need another arms race and shit. Nuclear winter, etc. That all sucks. And what we need to do is control these factors that control aging before we die. And then we can find ways to grow younger, to take any form we want to have, basically. And I think that's possible because everything is energy, so we shouldn't be so narrow-minded, keep an open mind, and do what we can for a better timeline for everyone, including ourselves. Do what's logical, depart from evil and do good. to be a do-gooder for a change. It might be fun. Test everything you learn.
And NASA will be ostracized, unless there is a major change in U.S. policy. Many Europeans want to join the Silk Road project, and this is one of the underlying motives to leave the EU Brussels dictatorship. Many European farmers and businesses are furious about the sanctions against Russia that have had a detrimental effect on all their economies and trade, reversing 26 years of bridge building and trust since the Soviet Union fell. But there are just as many who do not want to leave the EU and are faithful CIA, Vatican, fascist, TIP and TTP proponents who are determined to bring down Russia, invade it and take over all that country's resources. History repeats. The only way Britain, Russia and China can stop these insane people from going to war again and again, destroying Europe, leaving it in yet another heap of rubble, is to pull the plug on the dollar as international reserve currency and return to a gold standard, along with overwhelming support by European nations to dump the EU dictatorship in Brussels and reclaim their independence. If Switzerland can have a real democracy.
Exit, Brexit or Nexit. Say no to George Soros' EU superstate being ruled from Brussels. Ridiculous. And I think it's just a stepping stone to the Luciferian, totalitarian global government they have in mind. Which is a psycho idea anyway, of course, depopulating to 500 million and then ruling the world from Jerusalem is a psychotic idea.
For almost 1,000 years, why can't every other country in?
Because it's unrealistic. They're out of touch with reality. They're out of touch with reality. My view meter is sometimes not responding, so then I might repeat what I say.
Europe achieve the same. By doing so, we can all avert a devastating World War III and instead look forward to an amazing future along the Silk Road, which will be an international economic boon for all. Multipolar.
So the idea is power to the peaceful, power to the people, versus power to the pedo versus centralization. So decentralization versus centralization is giving one person all the power to make decisions for everyone, and decentralization is giving the people the power to decide. And a balance has to be found between these two, I think. And I'm not advocating a particular government, and I've made clear that the Jesuits and Masons are the main people doing this, not the Jewish people as a whole. So I'm not an anti-Semite. Actually, I'm anti-racism, and I claim that homophobia does not exist because there are 164 jihad Quran verses. And I'm for de-religionization, for getting rid of all religion through education, not making it forbidden, but just teaching the truth about the Bible being a collection of plagiarized polytheistic myths rolled into monotheism, which proves that God does not exist. More about all this in my previous broadcasts as well, for universal peace.
Cooperation as opposed to a one-world order unipolar, hegemonic dictatorship under a corporate fascist TPP and TIP control. What will it be? _share ... share on Facebook, share on Google+, tweet about this on Twitter, email this to someone, share on LinkedIn, share on Reddit, share on Tumblr. All content herein is owned by author exclusively. Some content may be satirical in nature. Expressed opinions are not necessarily the views of VT authors, affiliates, advertisers, sponsors, partners, technicians or Veterans Day Network and its assigns. In addition, all images within are full responsibility of author and not Veterans Day Network. Legal notice, comment policy, posted by Catherine Frisk on July 5, 2016, with 14,953 reads filed under investigations. You can follow any responses to this entry through the RSS 2.0. Both comments and pings are currently closed. Comments closed. 47 responses to World War III. Who is who in the zoo? Catherine Frisk, July 6, 2016 at 9:07 p.m. Maybe out of this debacle true leaders will be born and come forward, people with a real sense of vocation who are more interested in being socially responsible than in accumulating wealth for themselves. Catherine Frisk, July 6, 2016 at 8:52 p.m. With regard to Gordon Duff's article, connecting. Gordon.
Well, I found it worth reading just because it has this line: the Nazis in Germany were funded by the Americans, Rockefeller, J.P. Morgan, Ford, Bush, Allen Dulles, AIG, General Electric, and a number of others. So they are all controlled by these Jesuits, with the Black Pope in control of the intelligence agencies, according to that image that I've been showing of the Citizens Action Network on Facebook. And that quote was from the movie The Believer, which is, according to many, fascist movie, an anti-Semitic movie basically. The Believer. I found it quite interesting. I might play it again someday. And I've tested it, and so I've ordered a stamp of Hitler, 2 stamps, one with a swastika on it, and also a coin. I don't know if it's a pfennig or whatever, from 1940, also with a swastika on it. And it came through customs, so they're not doing their job. I thought that this stuff was illegal in the Netherlands. It's banned, or not? Is it legal tender? If it's a stamp, then I can still put this on a letter basically and send it. I don't know if a German stamp can also be used from the Netherlands. I'd have to check online. I'm not really a stamp collector anymore. As a child, I used to have a book with stamps. Pathetic. Or not, you decide. People can always leave a comment and Skype. Please like and subscribe. I have to light this. Because I have to stay sane, well, instead, so it's what I'm trying to do here. Okay, we can read some comments.
Is my friend. And as I have said before, we agree to disagree. Real friendship does not entail being a yes man. Real friendship is when you have the guts to disagree with someone you respect. I greatly respect Mr. Duff, and his opposing viewpoints can only add to, not detract from, our understanding of the world. Here's looking at you, kid. Go. July 10, 2016 at 12:47 p.m. Dear Catherine, I do not agree with everything you write. But you are obviously an independent person of integrity, and I cannot imagine you would have an agenda of anything other than what you personally feel is honest and
what we could all decide on together is to agree with everyone we disagree with from now on. Problem solved. Love is the answer.
Truthful. I wonder how you feel about the following. Gordon Duff took aim at you. Why do you think he took aim at you while you do not state things that are clearly stupid in any way whatsoever? But in his attack on you, he actually presented Michael Shrimpton as an example of truth and good research. Have you read his stuff? You still want
Based is all about being yourself and not caring what anybody else thinks.
You're going to have a deportation force. And
Keep busting.
page a beat.
To call GD your friend, think about it, and how you are being used. Catherine Frisk, July 10, 2016 at 8:23 p.m. It is called freedom of speech. He is entitled to his opinion, I am entitled to mine. We clash on certain issues. People who see Soros or BZ in any kind of favorable light are from a generation who viewed communism as a worldwide threat. Both Soros and BZ are vehemently anti-communist. There was a time I might have seen things in the same light, but the world has changed, it has moved on, and the extreme forms of communism that once were part of both Russia and China's political landscape long ago fizzled out. And to my mind anyway, people who keep banging the drum against communism are out of time and out of place. To my mind and not his, Soros and BZ have become the thing they hate, as human beings so often do, and now their policies have. Read more. Catherine Frisk, July 10, 2016 at 8:35 p.m. I do not see Soros or BZ as the capitalists they profess to be. They are corporate fascists, and the framework of the TPP and the TIP is one step removed from communism, the only difference being that instead of everything owned by the state, it is now owned by a small handful of corporations. Real capitalism is dying out everywhere. Small, medium and sometimes even large private business has been gobbled up by the monopolistic corporations. The same with farming, that is now GMO corporate farming. Patents of food sources should be criminalized, and farmers are being chased off their land and herded into cities. The same goes for private property ownership. Land tax is escalating to the point where many people cannot afford to live in there. Read more. Catherine Frisk, July 10, 2016 at 10:13 p.m. One last point. If you happen to have lived in a country where the tax system actually works and the government is not corrupt, and taxes actually go towards what people pay them for in the first place, high standards of affordable education up to university level, high standards of affordable health care, the NHS is the UK is one example now being destroyed through US insurance companies, high standards in the police that do not spend their time lining their own pockets with corruption, drugs and prostitution, high standards of affordable transport, and that does not include privately owned toll roads, high standards of old age pension funds, and care gates would just bump them all off. A corporate fascist system by comparison is daylight robbery. Read more. Catherine Frisk, July 10, 2016 at 10:15 p.m. In the U.S. the taxes people have paid have not gone back into the communities, and the system is corrupt. So-called social services are nothing of the kind. Instead of food stamps printed at little to no cost by the Treasury, they are printed.
About 53% of the American taxpayer money goes to the military. Costofwar.com.
By the banks who get paid with taxpayers' money and make a profit. These food stamps are redeemable at certain stores, in other words they are kept in business with taxpayers' money. Both the banks and the stores have loopholes and pay little to no tax and do not give back to the system. The same goes for private prisons. Eventually the system will crash, and it is. This is not capitalism. It has more in common with communism, where those at the very top lived good lives while the rest lived on the breadline. Read more. Catherine Frisk, July 6, 2016 at 8:30 p.m. I also said that any disagreements I have with GD are private and will remain so. He gives his points, I give mine. Take your pick. That is free speech after all. And no matter what you may or may not think of him, GD and Jim Dean allow me to post my articles here, and they do. Basic forms of government power structure: separation, associated state dominion, chiefdom, federalism, federation, confederation, devolution, integration, empire, hegemony, unitary state, administrative division, power source, democracy, power of many, direct representative, semi-others, oligarchy, power of few, aristocracy, military junta, plutocracy, stratocracy, timocracy, theocracy, critarchy, paertocracy, autocracy, power of one, despotism, liberal democracy, semi-authoritarian dictatorship, hybrids, anocracy, power ideology, monarchy versus republic, socio-political ideologies, absolute constitutional, directorial legalist, parliamentary, semi-presidential, presidential, authoritarian versus libertarian, socio-economic ideologies, capitalism, colonialism, communism, distributism, feudalism, socialism, anarchism versus statism, civil liberties ideologies, anarchy, monarchy, totalitarianism, global versus local, geocultural ideologies, central city-state, national unity, world politics portal. Google.nl. You have two cows, critarchy. Feudalism. You have two cows. Your lord takes some of the milk. Pure socialism. You have two cows. The government takes them and puts them in a barn. /organisationsandmarkets.com. Home, about, papers, projects, events, 21 economic models explained. February 25, 2009 at 3:04 p.m. Last 40 comments. Lastline. In celebration of Mahoney and Vitaliz's impressive achievement in strategic management, here is a related classic on economic systems. Height, K. Isran. 21 economic models explained. Socialism, you have two cows. You give one to your neighbor. Communism, you have two cows. The state takes both and gives you some milk. Fascism, you have two cows. The state takes both and sells you some milk. Nazism, you have two cows. The state takes both and shoots you. Bureaucratism, you have two cows. The state takes both, shoots one, milks the other, and then throws the milk away. Traditional capitalism, you have two cows. You sell one and buy a bull. Your herd multiplies, and the economy grows. You sell them and retire on the income. Surrealism, you have two giraffes. The government requires you to take harmonic lessons. An American corporation, you have two cows. You sell one, and force the other to produce the milk of four cows. Later, you hire a consultant to analyze why the cow has dropped dead. Royal Bank of Scotland venture capitalism, you have two cows. You sell three of them to your publicly listed company, using letters of credit opened by your brother-in-law at the bank, then execute a debt equity swap with an Associated General offer so that you get all four cows back, with a tax exemption for 5 cows. The milk rights of the 6 cows are transferred via an intermediary to a Cayman Island company secretly owned by the majority shareholder who sells the rights to all 7 cows back to your listed company. The annual report says the company owns 8 cows, with an option on 1 more. You sell 1 cow to buy a new president of the United States, leaving you with 9 cows. No balance sheet provided with the release. The public then buys your bull. A French corporation, you have 2 cows. You go on strike, organize a riot, and block the roads, because you want 3 cows. A Japanese corporation, you have 2 cows. You redesign them so they are 1/10 the size of an ordinary cow and produce 20 times the milk. You then create a clever cow cartoon image called Kaufman and market it worldwide. A German corporation, you have 2 cows. You re-engineer them so they live for 100 years, eat once a month, and milk themselves. An Italian corporation, you have 2 cows, but you don't know where they are. You decide to have lunch. A Russian corporation, you have 2 cows. You count them and learn you have 5 cows. You count them again and learn you have 42 cows. You count them again and learn you have 2 cows. You stop counting cows and open another bottle of vodka. A Swiss corporation, you have 5,000 cows. None of them belong to you. You charge the owners for storing them. A Chinese corporation, you have 2 cows. You have 300 people milking them. You claim that you have full employment and high bovine productivity. You arrest the newsman who reported the real situation. An Indian corporation, you have 2 cows. You worship them. A British corporation, you have 2 cows. Both are mad. An Iraqi corporation, everyone thinks you have lots of cows. You tell them that you have none. No one believes you, so they bomb the crap out of you and invade your country. You still have no cows, but at least you are now a democracy. An Australian corporation, you have 2 cows. Business seems pretty good. You close the office and go for a few beers to celebrate. A New Zealand corporation, you have 2 cows. The one on the left looks very attractive. Email, print, Facebook 1K+, Tumblr, LinkedIn 4, Twitter, Reddit, related, taxes au carbon informer guest bloggers. The Farmer's Cow in, Lenoir. Fun with words in, Klein. Entry filed under, Lean, Ephemera, Case Studies and Causal Inference. Nifty little nuggets, basic forms of government. A government is the system to govern a state or community. The word government derives, ultimately, from the Greek verb, kubernao, meaning to steer, the metaphorical sense first being attested in Plato. people.tamu.edu. Political Systems 101. There will be a quiz on Monday. Feudalism. You have 2 cows. Your lord takes some of the milk. Pure socialism. You have 2 cows. The government takes them and puts them in a barn with everyone else's cows. You have to take care of all of the cows. The government gives you as much milk as you need. Bureaucratic socialism. You have 2 cows. The government takes them and puts them in a barn with everyone else's cows. Ex-chicken farmers take care of them. You have to take care of the chickens the government took from the chicken farmers. The government gives you as much milk and as many eggs as the regulations say you should need. Fascism. You have 2 cows. The government takes both, hires you to take care of them, and sells you milk. Pure communism. You have 2 cows. You help to take care of them, and you all share the milk. Modified communism. You have 2 cows. You have to take care of them, but the government takes all the milk. Dictatorship. You have 2 cows. The government takes both and shoots you. Military oligarchy. You have 2 cows. The government takes both and drafts you. Pure democracy. You have 2 cows. Your neighbors decide who gets the milk. Representative democracy. You have 2 cows. Your neighbors pick someone to tell you who gets the milk. American democracy. The government promises to give you 2 cows if you vote for it. After the election, the president is impeached for speculating in cow futures. The press dubs the affair Cowgate. British democracy, you have 2 cows, you feed them sheep's brains and they go mad. The government doesn't do anything. Bureaucracy, you have 2 cows. At first the government regulates what you can feed them and when you can milk them. Then it pays you not to milk them. After that it takes both, shoots one, milks the other and pours the milk down the drain. Then it requires you to fill out forms accounting for the missing cows. Anarchy, you have 2 cows. Either you sell the milk at a fair price or your neighbors try to kill you and take the cows. Capitalism, you have 2 cows. You sell one and buy a bull. Environmentalism, you have 2 cows. The government bans you from milking or killing them. Feminism, you have 2 cows. They get married and adopt a veal calf. Totalitarianism, you have 2 cows. The government takes them and denies they ever existed. Milk is banned. Political correctness, you are associated with, the concept of ownership is a symbol of the male-centric, warmongering, intolerant past, too differently aged, but no less valuable to society. Bovines of non-specified gender, counterculture, wow, dude, there's like these 2 cows,
Universal
man,
peace now.
You got to have some of this milk. Surrealism, you have 2 giraffes. The government requires you to take harmonic lessons.
Basically, perhaps an autarkic aristocracy, basically. Where you have the rulership of the best, where you have the people with the highest grades getting the best jobs, instead of people giving each other the best jobs because they're family or they have some other connection of the same group somehow. And you could argue the government has a job in making sure that the whole population is represented when you're talking about governmental functions and also in other jobs. Anyway, I think that's not that important. It's more important to prepare, and better is preventing. Preventing beats curing. To prevent a world war, so people can all think for themselves how they could contribute to that better timeline without these insane nuclear weapons of self-destruction going off. People can protest on Dam Square. I doubt if protesters also get paid in the Netherlands. I've covered demand protest on demand, etc. in my previous broadcast, so they get paid to protest, so they're not doing it for a good cause anymore, but for money. So, then this concludes my broadcast for today. I hope you all enjoyed it and maybe learn something and test everything you learn, so don't believe anything you read or hear. Test everything you learn. Recovery begins with non-compliance. And have fun, do healing stuff for universal peace.